Today's episode is brought to you by Hidden House Coffee. Go check out their locations here in Orange County, California, or get some coffee delivered to your house at hiddenhousecoffee.com. Hey guys, welcome back to the Good Dude, Good Dad podcast. I'm Jordan.
And I am Ben.
And today we have a special guest on, Anthony Consiglio. He is, we met actually, I DM'd him on Instagram. He is a father of 3. He's been married for, what did you say, 7 years?
7 years.
7 years. He owns his own coaching business, fitness coaching, and he's a high-level executive at God Behind Bars, which is, if you guys haven't checked it out, please go check it out. I'll link it down below in the description along with his coaching business. But Anthony, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Heck yeah, man. I'm excited to be here.
What's wild, before we keep going, is he's not from here. And it just happened to be one of those things, if you're a believer, where you call it God things, but you're from Fort Worth, and he happened to be in Santa Ana.
Yeah.
When we wanted you to record. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Call it a God thing, but 3 days notice, honestly, getting down here. And I'm like, dude, I'll be in Santa Ana in like 3 days.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, when I saw
Let's
that
make it
message,
happen.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Because Jordan does all the messaging and stuff, but occasionally I just pop on and see if something got missed or something.
Yeah, that's why everything is misspelled, is because I'm the one that does it. And I was homeschooled, so I don't know how to spell correctly.
Oh, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming out. I know you had to catch a flight pretty soon this morning, but tell us a little bit about yourself. You can... We say to people all the time, you can go as far back as you want or as little as you want, but we like people to kind of know who you are a little bit, obviously.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. And thank you guys for having me out for sure. But yeah, born and raised in Las Vegas, grew up in a family of 4. Grew up really athletic, to be honest. My dad was around a lot. I had a really good dad. And so I got to play a lot of sports and got to really just be with him a lot of the time. And so growing up in Vegas is kind of a question mark for a lot of people, but for me it was exactly what you expect. And so being athletic, baseball was a big part of my life, basketball was a big part of my life, and so I chose to follow baseball just because it was something I was really good at, to be honest. I didn't really fall in love with baseball. I actually like basketball better. And chose to follow baseball, ended up going D1, and hurt my arm throughout that. Had scholarships kind of to go at big places, and hurt my arm, and I was like, shoot. And so I had Tommy John in high school, got it fixed, and then I had torn my shoulder, and I'm like, I'm not doing this again. So I decided to hang him up. Dang. Flew back from New Mexico, where I was attending UNM, and had a full identity crisis, honestly. Didn't know who I was without sports. And that's when I met Jesus, I could say that. I mean, it was just getting into a pretty dark place after that. Getting into drugs, getting into alcohol, partying, Vegas lifestyle, quote unquote, because I was like, well, if this is not my entire life was formatted to go after this dream of mine and that gets ripped from me, I'm going to go the other way, God. And so I was kind of mad at God and just went the other way. And going down that trail wasn't too good. Could have ended up in prison really easily. By the grace of God, I didn't. And shoot, man, got saved by a cop, actually, in a house of 5 of us. He was worshiping with a guitar.
No way.
And 5 of us did a message and was talking right to me. And I'm like, dude, that's me.
That's
and so
awesome.
Got saved there. That was July 22nd, 2013. Started attending church. And really from there started to build a relationship with Jesus. And if you're watching this podcast, that's not the entire story. I mean, he is the entire story, but that's not the reason for, why I'm here. But it's something that it's, following Jesus, it's changed my life. And so that's why I talk about it a lot. But, in 2013, when I'm going through church and attending that, I met a guy by the name of Jake Bodine. And I was attending his dad's church, and he's like, "Hey, dude, you ever thought about going into ministry?" I'm like, "No, I didn't even know you could do that." And so I was actually on the route to kind of go like fireman or medical or something to that tune. And I'm like, shoot, I'd love to do that. He cast a vision that I've just for real has come true now, 10 years later. But that day I was like, dude, that sounds amazing. I would love to do that. And so started working with God Behind Bars, planning churches and prisons, and bringing the gospel to some of the darkest places, to the ends of the earth, really. And I just fell in love with it. Then from there, met my wife, got married, and we were a startup organization. And I just decided, you know what, I probably need to make more. My wife was in the clubs. She was, if you know the clubs in Vegas, if you're from Vegas, it's bottle service, it's stuff like that. So my wife was actually pregnant as she's in the clubs. And I'm like, shoot, I got to get her out of this. So I decided to leave ministry, pursue personal training. So I started working my way up the corporate ladder at Lifetime. And that was, awesome, whatever is what it is. But I was working long days. And I was pursuing money on the side of that. I was doing network marketing too. So I was doing 6 to 3 personal training, 3 to really like midnight network marketing. My daughter had just been born. My son was about to be born. My wife's still doing cocktail service at like a day club, whatever it might be. And I'm like just burning the candle at both ends. And I'll never forget it. My wife looks at me, she goes, "Hey, I just missed the man that was after God." And I'm like, shoot, like, cause I was just, it hardens you, right? Like you're going through trying to make it, trying to provide a life for your family. It hardens you, and it can really burn out your marriage. And that's where I was getting. Wasn't really seeing my kids too much because I was just pursuing money the entire time, trying to build a life for them. But at the same time, it's like, dude, you're missing the point. Mm-hmm. But anyways, and so I started a devotional called Dangerous Prayers by Michael Todd. It's Transformation Church devotional. And the first devotional is to pray for something to change. And I prayed for God to use me. Very dangerous prayer. And 2 days later, got COVID, took zinc on an empty stomach, had herniations just from sports and lifting and stuff like that, completely blew out my back, like blew it out to the point where I couldn't get up for 11 days straight on like a sit-up position, just for 11 days, taking double Oxycontin 10s.
Sheesh. Could
not move. My parents had to come and feed me. We just had our son. So now we're 2 kids. We're 3-month-old. At this point, it's like September 2021. 3 months old and a just past 1-year-old, 1.5-year-old. So they were like Irish twins, 17 months apart. But couldn't move. Like legit could not move. So from there, I'm crying out to God, like, dude, like, what is going on? Why is this happening to me? And that was the difference. I kept asking why. I changed the question to, what do you want me to do? And God's just like, learn the word, teach the word. And I heard it clear as day. I'm like, okay, cool. And I just immediately had hope. So it was like, okay, I got to go back into ministry. So Jake's first person I called. Go back into ministry. That was October 2021. Had back surgery, completely healed it. Thank you, Jesus, man. That was terrible. But doctor said it was he's done 10,000 back surgeries. He said it was one of the biggest ones he's ever seen. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Dang.
Terrible. Worst pain I've ever been in. 10 out of 10. Thought about putting a gun in my head. To be honest, it was gnarly. And so from there, obviously, I've been working with God Behind Bars now. I have a real big passion for fitness, obviously.
Yeah.
And so I started a company called True North Fitness that inspires ministry leaders to get fit. We have a lot of ministry leaders that aren't. And so, I help pastors and church staff really just get their health in order so that they can do ministry better.
Dude, that's incredible.
But yeah.
Did you grow up Christian, or is that what you found later?
We were Creasters.
Okay.
C&E Christians at best. I actually went to Catholic school when I was little, and was a C&E Christian. If you know what that means, it's you go to Christmas and Easter.
Yeah.
And really, that was my background. And so I knew there was God, but I didn't really, like dive into that relationship or like know that, that was the reason that I was going to pursue my entire life of
Yeah.
ministry.
I asked that because Jordan and I both grew up in the church. And so when we have a guest that didn't, as like an actual following, not, like the Easter and Christmas, but I like asking the question and really getting people to understand of like, because we've heard it numerous times, but people sometimes are like, oh, it's so easy for you guys. Like you've always followed God. And it's like, well, hang on. Like following God and living a life that actually represents what we all say we believe is the hardest thing to do on this planet. It would be so much easier for me to just not care, for you not to care, for you not to care, and just to live life, right? Like do whatever you want with no consequences. Yeah, you have morals, you feel bad, but like a Christian life, a real, true Christian life is the hardest life to live. And I want to go back to a couple of the things you said of like you found your faith, right? And then you were asking the question of why, which we've all been there. I have been asking that same question right now recently. And actually this morning, which people might not believe these things, or they might think I'm exaggerating a timeline, but literally this morning at 5:00, I'm in 2 Corinthians right now. I'm just kind of rereading through the New Testament. And I'm also reading a book that he got too, by Matt Chandler. Is it I always butcher the name.
Mine hasn't showed up yet. So
never
I
mind.
think to live is gain, to die is...
Something like that.
Yeah.
You know, the Philippians verse.
Yep.
So I'm reading this book, and I've been going through a lot of crazy stuff recently, not just through business, but I think internally. And so this morning, I literally sat there, and it was just me by myself, kind of with a dim light in my kitchen, cup of coffee, and I was just audibly praying out loud. And I basically just had caught myself of saying, why, right? Like, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been doing this. I've been diligent. I've been generous. I've been this. I've been that. And then it like hit me like a freaking stop sign. And it was, oh, you're doing that stuff. Or are you doing this so you can say I? And I literally stopped. Again, audibly stopped by myself. If you were watching, you think I'm a crazy person, right? And I literally just stopped, and I was like, out loud, I am sorry, God. And I literally just said that dangerous prayer of like, I want you to do what you want, and I want to be able to receive it wholeheartedly and fully like understand it like in the way and the context of being like a man of faith, right? And so I sat there, and my prayer shifted from saying these things to, Lord, just use me in these ways. And I feel like if you've followed Jesus for any bit of time, I feel like it's a revolving door, right? You're going to go through seasons where things are rad. Things might not be great, but you are spiritually and mentally in the right place, so you don't say the why, versus you're like, okay, how do I fix it, right? And then you go through seasons of, okay, I'm fed up. I'm a little tired of this. I'm a little frustrated. And then you get slapped in the face. That happened to me this morning, but I just talked a lot. But anyways, I wanted to ask you of when you were in that season of finding your faith, being on fire for the Lord, and then getting, slapped in the face and kicked back down, what were you doing for yourself and for your family as a father and as a husband to make sure you didn't kind of go down a bad path? I know you said you had that moment where your wife kind of gut checked you, which we all need, but could you kind of talk us through some of those things that you were able to, one, experience, but two, kind of move forward with in that season?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was getting healthy again to start, right? Like, the back thing was so scary, and I was so afraid, and I really learned what the fear of God really meant at that moment for me. Like, fearing God, like, He is a good father, and He is a graceful father, but He is a very intentional father as well. And there's a healthy fear that we should all have, and that's what I learned. I didn't really fear God up until that point. Like, I knew He existed, and I knew He had grace, I knew He loved me. But for me, it was learning the fear of God. Like, no, you are mine. And for me, that changed my whole perspective on how to serve, how to love my family, as they go about, growing in that. And really, it starts with me. I'm the tip of the iceberg. And so it's dying to your cross daily. It's picking up your cross and carrying it and sacrificing yourself in a sense that you are the one that needs to lead out on grace, on love, on change, on all of that, because that's what makes a good dad. And if you live by the Bible is basically a very great way to lead and love your life. And I'm not saying God never promises it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
He never does. He basically tells us that it's actually going to be really hard for you to follow me. To so much so that he even says that having a family and leading ministry is going to be really hard. We saw that with Peter. Like it's part of the sacrifice that you pick up your mat and you walk. You experience God's presence, and then you live it out. And by living it out, you get to change, and that's the best part. Is because if you're living your life for yourself, I've been there. And it is empty. It always comes to an end. It leads to a worldly desire, which, if you don't know what that means, basically it's you're just trying to look for the next sin. And sin just leads to more disruption in your life, and it plants seeds that you don't want to grow. And so for me, it's planting seeds for God in other ways. And that's called living a life of blessing. And so living a life of blessing is really you're living in God's abundance and then under the protection of God. It doesn't mean anything's not going to be bad or anything's not going to happen, but it's that there's grace there, and that ultimately that, everything that God, what is that verse? Those that are out for God, basically good comes around. I don't remember the verse, but anyways.
I'm not sure if there's a question that's going to come out of this, but I love where you were saying in your story where, your wife's in the clubs, and you want to get her out and get her home and realize that it's not good. And, you're doing network marketing on the side. We need to talk about that later, because I'm pretty sure I was in the same network marketing.
Probably.
We used to go out to Vegas all the time for stuff. I'll tell you a funny story where Ben calls it a cult.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you later. It's really good. But I love that sometimes what I found in my life too, because I had a similar thing happen where I was like, okay, I need to take care of my family, so I'm going to pursue, I actually ended up in banking, which I hated every second of it, but banking and then network marketing on the side. And it's like you can do something sometimes with the best intentions. Like it's not like I would assume you didn't get into those industries just because you're like, I want to make a crap ton of money. You're like, yeah, part of it is, but part of it's like, I want to provide for my family. I want to set up legacy for them. I want to set my kids up because, we're supposed to leave for generations, our kids. And it's like sometimes you can be doing a good thing, but not doing the right thing. And I feel like, where it's, you can be pursuing something with the best intentions, but it may not be the intentions that God has for you. And I've kind of been learning that in my own life, where I'm like, there's been times in my life where I'm pursuing something with the best intentions, but, maybe it's not the right avenue. And I'm having to find a way to go back and, ask God, I'm like, hey, am I doing the right things? Not, I don't know, maybe that's a little mixed up or messed up or, but like what was the question I had with this? I was trying to figure it out as I went, but
I think I know where you're going.
Yeah. Go for it.
It's basically, when you live your life for God, right? It's ultimately the decisions that you make. You got to be really careful, because I think a lot of people, what they do, especially those in ministry, they put their work above their family. And I think that's the wrong thing to do. You need your personal relationship with God first. That's your Bible study time. That's who you are as a person. That's your prayer life, all of that. That's up here. That's first. Okay. That example leads to your marriage. That's second. And then your kids, right? In that order. Then your work. And a lot of people don't get that right, even in ministry. And that filter, if you don't get that right, like it can really wreck you. And don't get me wrong, like there are times when those can shuffle based on seasons or balance or whatever. I'm sure you guys are busy, like young kids, you know, you've got three, all young, I got three. Like nothing's ever perfect. Everything's kind of all over the board.
Controlled
to be
chaos.
honest. Yes, it's controlled chaos. And as a father, like you're trying to manage it all and there's balance and stuff like that. But when it comes to like the big decisions, you need to go down and in with that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And so I learned that actually from network marketing, crazy enough, the guy that was teaching it. And that's what attracted me to that with values and all that. But it ended up being,
Yeah.
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 Anyways,
We'll talk about that later.
we'll talk about that later. But
Took sips of the Kool-Aid.
yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
Shut up. Your wife was in one too.
boom.
Not a cultish one. Oh, man.
Hey guys, quick break. This is Jordan with Good Dude, Good Dad. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Hidden House Coffee. Get 15% off your next order by going to hiddenhousecoffee.com and using the code GDGD15. It'll be in the details and description down below. Make sure you subscribe, and a huge shout out to Road as well. Now back to the show.
I wanted to, it's not the exact verse you were talking about, but again, you guys can believe what you want, but there's so many things that people like to say are coincidence. And it's what I read this morning, 2 Corinthians 4. It's not the exact verse, but it says, yes, we live under constant danger of death because we serve Jesus, so that the life of Jesus will be evident in our dying bodies. And that's genuinely referencing how hard of a life that Christians live, right? And so it's not the exact verse you were looking for, but obviously it was similar-esque. But I think for people listening that don't have faith or are questioning or hate us Christians because of whatever reason, like we got to remember that whether you believe it or not, life on this earth is very short. So whatever you believe in after that and whatever happens to you after that, that's a different topic. But what we do here is short. If you lived to 80 in the grand scheme of eternity, like that is very short. And so what we genuinely do and believe, say, and act really does matter. But going back to like your ministry background, the God behind bars thing, I think there's so much value there that we can share with people. And again, you can share whatever you want, but I think similar-esque to our previous guest, which is kind of ironic that they're kind of next to each other, is he works with homeless. And people are so quick to write off homeless people, right? I've done it myself. I feel like every single person in this room has done it. Every single person has probably done it. At some point, you look at them and you're like, oh man, those guys are crazy. Like, don't look at me. Don't make eye contact. Same thing with people in prison, right? They kind of get written off or, whatever, man, you're scum, or whatever the case may be. Like, I want you to kind of speak into that and
Dude, I'd love to.
And how it's shaping you as, this is like the caveat to that, but how it's shaping you as a man of God and as a father, because you have 3 young kids and you're seeing and working with what could potentially be any one of our kids in this room if we are not being diligent in the way that we live out our lives with intentionality.
Yeah, would love to. So yeah, society really does write off inmates, and I get it, right? You think that person is a monster, and don't get me wrong, there are some people in there that are bad people, and for whatever reason that is worth, but the 90 to 95% of them are just normal dudes or women, for lack of better terms. They're guys that you could sit down and have a conversation just like this, that honestly, I was like, dude, many times I sat into a prison, I'm like, this guy could literally be my best friend. Like, this dude is just so legit, so cool. And that's not all of them, but I'll give you a story. First of all, Jesus' first save was an inmate, the thief on the cross, right? Like, he was after sinners. That's very clear. That's who he came to save, was those types of people, were people that were marginalized, right? the people that were cast out. And so with this class of inmates, you had mentioned earlier that you were struggling to, why God, right? Why God? Why God? I was in that season about 3 weeks ago. And for those that are wondering, it's a walk. Like it is a walk with God that you are constantly walking. We're human, right? He made us human. He gave us free will. But at this particular moment, I'm sitting in a prison about an hour north of here, Norco Prison. It's actually Hotel California.
Yeah.
You know the song?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that until I got out of there. But anyways, that's a different story. But I'm sitting in there and I'm feeling it. Like I had been in an airplane, once or twice a week. Not having seen my kids that much. I'm serving up and down and around all over. And I'm just like, man, I'm so tired. And I'm going into this prison and I can't help but think about, all my like things that I'd rather be doing before I walked in there, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah.
But when you go into prison, you can't bring anything. Can't bring your phone, can't bring any distractions. You're there to serve. Okay. Matthew 25 says, when you went and visited those in prison, you did it unto me. And that verse was in the back of my head as I'm walking in there. Meet this kid. Let's call him Tony. Meet this kid, and he's like, hey, man, I just want to tell you I'm really grateful that you're here. And he's standing this far from me. I'm just telling you I'm really grateful that you're here. He goes, I didn't really have a father figure. Growing up, my father was gangs. That was my father figure. And that's all I ever knew. And that's honestly why I'm here. And I now have all these Christian brothers next to me, and I get out and find a Christian community, and I can't wait. So I'm so grateful for God Behind Bars and the Pando app, because you guys create communities of Christians and fathers that allow us to, build back a better life with a community that's actually right for me. And he can replace a worldly father with a heavenly father and brothers that he can walk with. And God just whacked me over the head at that moment. I start just bawling, dude. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's a very similar moment you had this morning. I'm so sorry. Like, it's just, you're doing it unto me, dude.
Yeah.
You're doing it unto me. Like, it's me that you're serving. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so the point. That's so the point. And so that was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was a second part to what you were saying that I was going to get into.
How does some of that shape you as like a dad now? Because you probably see some crazy things, you hear some crazy stories. It would be really difficult not to be jaded by those encounters in a prison or, honestly, like outside of the prison, the constant weight of being in ministry, like holds so much weight that it's really hard not to sometimes check your baggage at the door before you get home to your family.
Yep.
So like those are those things where I'm like, how do you, your daily life, how are you dealing with that when you get home? Because Jordan and I talk a lot about being intentional, right? Obviously, we're not perfect at it. We try, and we always talk to each other about it. It's almost like without even us knowing, I feel like more of an accountability thing. But we constantly talk about it, right? Like, you've had a long day, you're stressed, you were being a professional babysitter for the day, and then you go home and it's really difficult to not like get triggered by something so stupid, right? But it's those constant reminders. Like for me, it's my wife. She'll just say those moments and those things where she's like, oh, and she says it sometimes in a sarcastic way because I'm sarcastic and it's kind of like my love language sometimes, but she'll just straight up be like, oh, you gave all those other people your attention today, right? And I was like, oh my gosh. Yes, I did, but don't say that to me right now, But it's, again, one of those gut checks where
Devin's a gangster.
Dude, she is, and I need it. And I respond to it versus when I was younger, 12 years ago when we were dating, she would have said that to me, I would have went off, versus now I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, you're right. I did give all those people my attention today. So I got to suck it up
Right.
and be dad.
Yep.
Like, how do you, with your career and your life and travel, do that at home?
Yeah, dude, that's such a great question. I had this epiphany, if you will, yesterday while I was working out. And I think we give our best to our careers as American society. Other societies don't do that, but we do it here. And as men, you pour out your best. You suppress emotions. your entire workday. You bury things that you probably wanted to say, but you didn't. You give your best to, quote unquote, your boss, whatever it might be, whatever, situation you're in. And then you come home and you want to turn that off. And it's not a good idea to turn it off. Honestly, it should be flipped. You should give your best to your wife and your kids. And I noticed it when I started to see my son react in certain lights. Specifically, my son. My wife asked him, hey, do you want to go here? And he goes, no, I don't like Dad. I lost it emotionally because I was seeing as growing my son. He's 3 years old, and I was seeing as growing my son as like this, like you got to be stronger, like you got to be this, you got to be that. But I wasn't showing him love. You know what I mean? And that was for me like a big wake up, a really big wake up. And how you learn to give your best, you don't really like have this switch that you turn on and off. It's more so that you just get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And you have to learn, like the early parts of my marriage, there were some big knockout fights. I think anybody can say that. But you get better, you get more grace-filled. You learn to grow. And that's honestly, bro, like that's why I work out, is because those emotions that I've been bearing, the tongue that I've been holding, and I'm a pretty straight to the point guy. Like I'm pretty direct, as a leader in an organization. Like I have to bridle my tongue a lot, because I don't, how I give it isn't necessarily how it's received. Yeah. And I've grown in that area quite a bit.
Don't know anybody else like that,
to be honest. And so,
that's funny.
But it's, you grow in it and you get stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's the point. And it's not something that it's like overnight, over day, like you're ready to rock. You got to work on it, and you got to take it day by day. And I have really learned in the busyness of life, if you can, my wife hates me for this, but I don't like to plan, because it's like, I want to focus on the 24 hours that's right in front of me. And she's a planner, and I'm like, go plan, do your thing. But like, I just want to focus on getting through the day and maximizing this day to the best of my ability. Because if I'm focused on the future, like I'm going to tap out in the day today. Like I'm just going to shut it down. But I work out to release those emotions that I'm feeling throughout the day. I call them worship runs, worship workouts. And that allows me to put an outlet into something so that I can go be a good dad.
Yeah.
Honestly. And that's why I work out. Because I don't understand if you don't have an outlet. Most people put that type of energy into addictions. Yeah. And whether it be food, whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, whatever it might be, you can take those emotions and put it towards energy that's bad, or you can take it and put it towards energy that's good. Yes. But you have to make that call. Yeah. You know what I mean?
There's I haven't been so good about it lately, but there's a group of young men I was kind of mentoring unintentionally. And I would tell them all the time, I'm like, men are like a compressed air bottle, and you can let yourself compress. And if you don't have a release valve, occasionally you're going to blow, and it's, I found that, we have these buildups, and Ben's actually really good about checking me on this, where he's like, bro, I can tell you need to go to jiu-jitsu, because you need to make sure that you're doing your you stuff, because if not, you're going to blow. And I believe you're right. I think that is what leads to addiction, because if you don't have a solid outlet for that release, then you're looking for releases somewhere else, in pornography, in alcohol. I've gone back and forth with, I love chewing tobacco, and I found that's my release. And Ben's like, bro, you're nasty. And I'm like, and then it checks me, and I go, you're right. It is gross. I need to check myself. So, but I believe you're right. I think finding healthy outlets to find that release is a good thing. you know?
It's simple things. And I'm actually very stoked we're talking about this because, again, we want to provide value to people, right? We don't want to just, what we never want to happen in this room, and it happens, dude. You're not the only one that's been emotional in this room. For whatever the reason is, this
You had
room,
me crying earlier.
dude, this room breeds like masculinity emotion. It's actually pretty dope because years ago
Men
I'd have
don't
been
talk about it.
right,
Yeah.
and years ago I'd have
don't
been like,
talk
oh, you
about
guys
it,
are
yeah.
soft. You know,
Yep.
if I would have saw that, I'd been like, soft, you know. But now I'm just like, the simple releases. For you, it's the gym. For me, it's jujitsu. I honestly haven't worked out in a really long time, and I used to. But I know it, I haven't gone to jujitsu the way I usually train, like 2 to 4 days a week without fail. But this last season of my why me, like, dude, in the last like month and a half, 2 months, I've barely trained and it's killing me. And I'm starting to catch myself be very short tempered, very snappy. Jordan told me I was PMSing this morning. Like those little things where I'm like, oh shoot, dude, like it's because I don't have that outlet.
Yep.
And for the normal person listening, not normal, for the guy listening or a woman listening, those short little things or these things that we don't notice is things like chewing tobacco or not being present for your family, or for you don't want to plan. I'm a planner. Like these little things are signs of like, hey, if we don't first take our own care and like fix it, like you're not going to be able to help anyone. And I never understood that until I became a father. You know, even as a husband, I didn't really understand that. The whole put your mask on before you can help somebody else first. I was like, no, dude, I'm going to put my wife's on first. But as I'm growing older and maturing in as a father, and just realistically just becoming hopefully a better man, I've realized if I don't help myself, which I would have said is soft or not needed, like, dude, you're just fooling yourself.
Yeah.
You're gonna bust.
Yep.
Yeah, and this actually leads us into, maybe you're just a mastermind and you steer the conversation this way, but lead us actually into your personal training business for pastors and pastoral staff, because like we were just saying, you know, you a lot of times you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself before others. And I've seen, because I grew up in the church, and you know, my parents we're always behind the scenes in church, you know, and there's a lot of very unhealthy people within the church, and in their mind, you know, they're like, oh, well, I'm putting all the important stuff, you know, I'm sacrificing myself, or whatever excuse they may have. Or I'm not even an excuse, like in their mind, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I'm not dogging on them for that. So tell us a little bit about that fitness side of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started True North when came out of COVID. I was actually working at Lifetime, and was COVID, everything, you know, the world shut down. I'm like, well, I'm going to order equipment. And so I started out of my garage, and I was training people for, you know, a good amount of time out of my garage. And it kind of grew. And, you know, just this last year, I have really felt a call to help people in ministry stay in ministry. I didn't realize how many people fall out of ministry. I think it's like something 33% of people start and end their career in ministry.
Dang.
And I'm like, man, that's wild. And so part of it's endurance. Like you got to be able to run your race. How do you run your race, man? You got to be fit for the race.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so started it, and I'm in the process of transforming it into a nonprofit, so that it can be a full-blown just service to pastors and church staff, and I do personal coaching and stuff like that too, and have transformed many lives, and that's awesome. But my heart is to obviously make it towards ministry-minded people for the kingdom, but it doesn't have to be all, you know, ministry people. It's really any high-level business leader that has a heavy load, any dad that just feels like they are, you know, beat down, would love to help. And really, it's all online coaching. You know, it's all done through an app and can be really done anywhere. But I focus on mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. So I cover all 4 of those pillars as much as I can, because anybody can go online, just grab a program, and, you know, hit the gym. But it's like, how are you going to apply that program? You know, how are you going to stick to it? How are you going to stay consistent? How are you going to be able to put yourself in a position to where you can create time for yourself and learn how to eat better on the go and learn how to make your health different in the busyness of life. People don't understand that. And so pastors are that way. They'll fast all day and then they'll eat something around 2 and then they'll eat a heavy dinner at 5, and you didn't eat enough calories, so you think you're in a deficit, but really now you're over the age of 40, so your hormones are all out of whack, and so now you're plummeting and your adrenal glands are fatigued, and now you can't even get back on. Most my pastors, I have to reverse diet them to where they're almost gain a little bit of weight at first, and then their body will start to regulate the right way. But yeah, no, that coaching business, I mean, at the end of the day, when you're running your race, you got to check your gauges. And I don't think people are aware of it. And so hopefully today you can now be aware of it. Like when your red signs that are going off, you're getting temper. You're starting to get angry. You're starting to think about doing more addictions, whether it be chewing tobacco or smoking or drinking or pornography or whatever those are your gauges. Those are red flags going off. You have to look at those red flags as like just warning signs to like, hey, you're hitting, think of it on a highway, you're hitting the berms and you're starting to, okay, I got to bring it back. So what does it look like bringing it back? It's going for a run. It's go work out. It's getting in some worship music. It's praying. It's maybe it's a combination of those two. Maybe it's taking your wife on a date night. It's those types of red flags that you have to manage where you're at. And it's going to be seasonal. Like there's going to be seasons like right now, dude, I am so busy. The fact that I could make this happen, I was like total God thing. Yeah. That's awesome. But it's managing the chaos by checking the warning signs and being aware of it. When in Genesis it says that Adam lived this many years and then he fathered. Next person lived this many years and then he fathered and he fathered and he fathered and he fathered. Why does it mention that? It mentions that because it's a full-blown identity in who these men were to their successor, their child, in the lineage. But they had that opportunity, and the Bible mentions that they were a father at that moment more than anything else.
Dang. I haven't thought of it like that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And so when you look at it that way, it's like, that's the sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's the sacrifice. And that's the badge of honor, man. You know how cool it is to be a dad? Like, I had the best dad growing up, and I'm so grateful for that. And he was just available. He was wealthy. He was a real estate investor. And so all my teens growing up, he spent so much time with me. And I didn't realize it until I was on a stag trip. One of these really wise pastors from New York, King's New York Church, he's noticing how I'm like throwing these cornhole bags and how I played golf and all this stuff. He goes, you had a really available dad, didn't you? And I said, yeah. He goes, I knew it. Because you're just naturally good at sports, all sports, because you had a dad that was showing you how to do it. And all these like lights start clicking off in my head and like reflecting on like, oh my gosh, like he is so right. Like I'm so good at these things just because I had someone pour into me and pass the baton. Yeah. And that's fatherhood.
Dude, you just light bulb blew up in my brain because I had a very, very present dad too. Like incredible. And I've always been told a lot of things, like my wife and like other people that are constantly like, dude, you're just so good at like a lot of things. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not that great at them. But they're like, you just know how to do a lot of things. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I just know how to do. And it's always just been like, oh, I just know how to do it. But it's like, no, dude, my dad, you know, there's reasons why I know how to do construction. My dad. There's reasons why I know how to cook. My dad. There's reasons why I know how to, you know, hit a baseball and play football and play hockey. My dad. There's a reason why I know how to talk to people and love on people. My dad. And it's like, oh man, you just like literally like a play of just my dad moments exactly just went through my brain. I'm like, dang.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. I like your Genesis reference because fatherhood is so important. And one of the big things, there's a lot of big things we want for this podcast and this platform, But one of the big things that we say, and specific to men, but fatherhood, because we're all dads, but if we had better men in the world, so much of this junk wouldn't be happening. That dude in prison, you called him Tony, wouldn't be in prison. He said it to you, right? There's countless stories of these things happening where if there was more present men around, I mean, there's statistics that prove that all day long, right? From every walk of life. And to the fatherhood, I've said it a few times. I think Jordan's even said it. So we've had guests that said it. But when we do have other guys that are friends with us ask us, dude, how do you show up for the kids? And I tell them, I was like, well, honestly, it's kind of simple. I said, the second I chose to become a father, I forfeited my own life for a season. And that's exactly what you just described in the Bible in Genesis is like, and I've never thought of it like that. So for me, I'm just like, oh, dang, dude, that was dope.
Well, I mean, you can be a dad and not be a father, you know? Like, you can be the sperm donor or you can be the present in their life. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are the one that helped conceive that child. You know, you can be a father figure to someone without, you know, them being your biological kid. It's about forfeiting your own life and showing up for them.
Yeah.
And
it's just a season. Because
Yeah.
I've also heard the opposite of, well, you don't need to stop your life. And it's like, I'm not saying I'm stopping my life. I'm walking into a new life. And I freaking love it. And I wouldn't go back. Like, even on like the hardest days, I get to go home and see those 3 little kids running up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the sickest thing ever, you know? Or like when you get home and the garage opens, my daughter just flies out. And I want to be super conscious of time, but I want to ask you, you've referenced it a couple times, but what to you makes a good dude and a good dad?
Good dude and a good dad. I think it simplifies it. I really like that the name you guys have coined this because it's really all it is you're a good dude, which makes you a good dad. And it's exemplifying that. It's making the right decision. You know what I mean? Like it's when you're faced with the decision to do X or do Y, you choose the right one for the sacrifice of your kids. And as the man of the home, you know, Christ says in Ephesians 5 that you should love your wife as Christ loved the church. Well, how did Christ love the church? He died for the church. He was a sacrifice, you know, and he was a living example of a sinless being too. So to be a good dude means to be a sinless dude. And the more that we can sin less, the better we're going to be an example to our kids and to our wife. And that is going to make you a good dad.
Dang. Oof. That's a good rap. I like that.
dang.
We I don't want to rush because we're having such a good conversation, but we also don't want you to rush to the airport. Jordan likes to ask one last question, and then we'll kind of try to wrap up.
Yeah, I think you actually just kind of tied it in there is try to sin less. But what is one actionable step that you would give to a new dad, a young man, someone trying to be
A guy in prison.
someone trying to be a better dude or a better dad or both?
I think you got to look at your kids where they're at, and try not to allow the bad parenting that you were given pass down to your kids.
Yes.
So the best example of fatherhood that I've been able to really coin, that I get emotional every time I talk about it, but it's when you're a good dad, you take everything that was given to you, all the wounds that were given to you. Let's just keep it real. Like 85% of kids that have a parent that is or has been incarcerated will go to prison. Fatherless statistics are gnarly.
Yeah.
It's because we don't deal with our sin. And if you deal with your sin, you don't pass that to your kids. Okay. So the outlashes and anger, so I always mention that one because that was mine. And then all the other crap that I have chosen to walk away from, my kids don't have to deal with. But the more that you choose to allow those things in your life, it's going to pass to your kids. Mm-hmm. And so being a good dude and a good dad is about sacrificing your fleshly desires so that your kids don't have to plant seeds they don't want to sow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I like it. And for a non-believer, he's basically saying you better figure out what it is that's going to get you to change so you don't pass that on. For us, obviously, we lean towards our faith, and the Bible's a playbook, right? But if you don't believe in that, like, you got to find something or someone that is giving you enough of a reason to stop that crap. And in whatever that is, you gotta find it. You know?
Dude, thank you so much for coming on.
I didn't want to rush this because we're literally having a great conversation. It's crazy how fast time flies in here when we're just chatting. But
How long we been going?
almost an hour.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But dude, we're very appreciative of you making the time. Like you said, you're busy. For people that want to know, it's Saturday morning at 7:30 a.m. is when we started, you know. But we value this time and your experience. And for us, the goal and hope is that we keep finding people that are willing to share your story, because stories are everything. Stories are power, and they give us the ability to hopefully invoke some form of emotion in each other and create like that tension point so we can want to change and do change. And we're going to link all of your stuff. And
For people that might just be listening, where's the best way to find you / get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably my Instagram, honestly. AM Consiglio, at AM Consiglio, or at True North Fit _. Either of those. And
Perfect. I'm going to link, like I said, I'm going to link all that stuff down below, but just in case they were just listening. But dude, thank you again for coming out. Definitely did a God thing that this was able to happen.
Heck yeah.
And, you know, we look forward to keeping in touch and building this friendship some more. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Again, everything will be down below. If you want to reach out to Anthony, go check out God Behind Bars as well. I will link that down below. And always remember, be a good dude, be a good dad.